Welcome into another edition of The Session with Londa and David. My name is David Austin.
I'm Londa Sherwood Austin, and welcome back.
I'm glad to see you here today, honey, and you look very autumnal.
Yeah.
It's fall. You've got a fall feeling happening.
Yeah?
I like it.
Autumn. I don't know.
What's the difference between autumn and fall?
It's the same thing.
Oh, I don't know.
Two words for the same season.
I wonder why. It doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know, but Google is free.
Okay. Google is free. Thank you for the information. This is supposed to be an informative program. It's a podcast that focuses on the three things that we're most interested in. And what are those, Londa?
Well, we often focus on restaurants, real estate, and retail sales.
I enjoy restaurants, but not as much as I enjoy you cooking at home. If I was going to do the restaurant review that no one asked for today, it would be the food you make at home, because you make good stuff.
Thanks.
I really like it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm right after we're done here, I'm going to go grab some stuff at the store and make some food at home.
That'll be fun.
I'm starving.
Yeah.
Not really, but
You're hungry. I see it in your face. You look a little something. There's a little something there.
yeah. No, that what you see in my face is the result of the last 2 weeks.
Okay, tell me what you mean by that.
Okay. I've been doing real estate for quite some time.
Yeah.
I promise you when I say that we have had 5 years worth of weird things happen in real estate in the last 2 weeks.
We have had some weird stuff happen in real estate.
I promise you, if you're listening to this podcast, or better yet, watching the YouTube, you are going to hear some things today that you don't expect to hear.
Oh, this is exciting.
Yeah, this is the behind the scenes of real estate that people don't normally talk about.
Okay.
I'm gonna talk about some of this because it has been the weirdest couple of weeks ever.
Okay.
One thing after another that you just, okay. So our creative director and assistant is newer to real estate, right? Is studying for her real estate exam and everything. And she said to me yesterday, this is the shit people don't know that you do. And I was like, yes. And by the way, you should have recorded what you just saw. And she said, oh, I should have, but I was so worried about you while you were doing that. And yes, I am going to get into this. She said, I was so worried about you and I thought you were going to get in there and have a panic attack. And I wanted to just be here for you. And so I didn't even think about recording it. And I'm like, get that content, girl. But
that's right.
Yeah, it's been wild. It's been absolutely wild. I've got several crazy stories to tell you today. So stick around. Don't go anywhere. We are going to get into it. But first, let's talk about the market just a little bit, if you don't mind.
Okay. I'd like to do that.
Because we get these numbers, and I know that if you on social media, sometimes you see why can't I? There we go.
You got to click on it to open it.
Yeah. I did. Sometimes on social media, you'll see like realtors will post like market updates and there's this many homes available and blah, blah, blah. And what bothers me about that is no one ever really explains, but what does it mean?
Okay.
For the consumer.
Okay.
So I want to explain a little bit about what that means for the consumer. And if you happen to catch a glimpse of our screen here, that's great. But we're going to talk about it so you don't need to see it. So we get these market updates weekly in our office, and it's just available homes in this city, in this city, in this city, and then the Tri-Cities as a whole. As a whole? What is wrong with my brain? It just glitched.
Well, you've had some weird stuff going on the last 2 weeks, so that's all.
Okay, as a whole. And of course, if this is your first time listening or watching us, we are based in Eastern Washington in Tri-Cities, Kennewick, Pasco, Richland. And we're really kind of quad cities with West Richland. We're getting a little bigger. Benton City, Findlay, so all those. But the primary cities, Kennewick, Pasco, Richland. So what we can see from these market updates is, for example, in Kennewick, Washington, single family homes under the price of $400,000, there are currently 50 available.
Okay.
50. Single family homes above 400,000, there are currently 170 available, and then new construction 116. Okay. But what does it mean? What it means is that if you, for example, are perhaps a first-time home buyer, which is a good portion of the market right now, and you're wanting to stay under $400,000 in Kennewick, Washington, you don't have a lot to choose from.
There are 50.
There are 50, but I can guarantee you there's a bottom end of those, like one that we saw today, and now it's time for a story.
Okay, so this morning we had a showing.
There's a backstory, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Before this morning.
Tell the backstory.
So somebody reached out to me, a client reached out to me, potential client, a buyer reached out to me through Zillow and wanted to see this property. And I reached out to the seller, would like to show this property. I look up the showing instructions. I'd like to show this property. They get back to me and explain the lockbox, which is where we keep the keys for realtor access, is broken. And the only set of keys to the property is inside this lockbox.
Which is broken.
Which is broken. Nobody can get into it. So they called a handyman out, couldn't get into it, called a locksmith out. So I got on a wait list. We were supposed to show it at 9 a.m. on Friday. Okay. He said, that's not going to happen, but I can put you on a wait list for the people who want to see it. Great. Let me know when you've got access to the box. So this morning about 9:30, I get a text. Hey, we got into it. When do you want to come and see it? I reach out to the client. They finally got it. When can you see it? We decide on 11 o'clock. So there was all this weird debacle leading up to it.
Sure.
Which that's not weird story number one. Stick around. There's about 10 today. And like what? You can't get in the lockbox. I don't even understand. So then I get there and I see, it's a contractor box. It's not like our Supra, So anyway.
So we get there. She goes to open the lockbox.
Right. I put the little code in.
And it opens. And she gets the key and goes to put the key in the door, and the door just swings right open. It was not closed at all. And I can tell you what happened, because when we left, I had to close the door.
Yeah, you locked up.
I had to lift the door and pull it toward me, which made the whole front of the house bow out a little, but that's when it clicked and was locked.
So let me tell you about this house. It's $167,000, and depending on where you live in the country, you already know what it looks like. If you live in a place like where we live, you know that for $167,000, you get a teardown, almost. Or a strip to the studs.
Super flip,
and
which
rebuild.
You now got to go in there and rebuild.
So when you go to one of these that's clearly in disrepair and the door just pushes open, you get a little freaked out.
Like you're going to meet some homeless people, maybe
you're
somebody
just hoping there's
meth.
Nobody inside,
right?
And you don't encounter anyone. This was the kind of house where when I walked in the kitchen and you saw what the floor did, you said, I wouldn't stand in there for long if I were you.
Absolutely.
So there you go. So some of those 50 are going to be like that. They're projects, for investors, they're, whatever.
Right.
So you got to keep that in mind too.
Sure.
Okay. So we've got a little bit more room here above 400,000, but that part of the market isn't moving quite as quickly. So let's look at the next city. Richland.
Yes.
If you think 50 was bad, if you want to live in Richland, Washington and keep your budget under $400,000 for a home, you have 24 to choose from.
That's it. 24.
That's it. And there's going to be about half of those that are like what we just described.
That's exactly right.
So let's go look at Pasco. About the same. There are 30 under $400,000, which in our market is a starter home. I know. It's a lot. It's a lot for a first-time home buyer, but that's just how it is. We have a strong, thriving market.
Well, and the reason there are only 30 is because these move quickly.
Yes.
That's the fastest moving segment of the marketplace today.
And that is the point of all of this that I want to tell you. If you're a first-time home buyer or you're a move-up buyer that's looking $400,000 and below, you better have your ducks in a row. And what do I mean by that? You need to have your financing in place if you're not paying cash. You need to already have that pre-approval letter in hand.
Yes.
You need to already know exactly what you're working with, know exactly what you're looking for, because when you find it, you've got to be ready to pull the trigger right now.
Right.
Because it's not going to be there for long. There's just not that much available. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Well, so the story gets better. So this house we went to today,
This, by the way, is the least dramatic story we have today.
No working heat source. None. They had baseboard heating. One of them's ripped off the wall, and the other one does not look like it's hooked up to anything.
Functioning.
They had some space heaters in there that were on. One was actually laying down. I don't think that's to code. Not sure.
But at least they were set to 59 degrees.
Yes. They didn't want it to freeze in the house, right? And then there was some pretty serious water damage in one of the rooms.
Sure looked like it.
And the kid that wanted to see the house was a first-time home buyer. And I can tell you this. If you're a first-time home buyer, you do not want to buy a fix and flip house. You don't, because that takes a level of education and skill that your average first-time home buyer does not have. Now, you may be a handyman's apprentice for the last 4 years of your life, and you may be ready to get your contractor's license.
Sure.
And that could be a perfect first home for you. That's not your standard first home.
Right.
For your standard first-time home buyer. Yep. So, you went through all the right questions with the young man. You asked what the next steps would be, and
I did what I do.
Right, and it was beautiful.
Thank you.
The reason I'm so interested in how you handled your presentation like you normally do is because we may have been
possible.
secret shopped, and here's what I mean.
Yeah.
This person came
with
a relative. Maybe
a friend
who was wearing a pair of smart glasses with 2 cameras and a microphone visible. And so finally at the end I realized it, and I said, "Hey, are you wearing smart glasses?" And I got to tell you, she said, "Yes, I often record videos with my smart glasses."
She's like, "It's cool because I get to listen to music while I'm working and I do all kinds of stuff." And you are interested in those. So you asked her a bunch of questions about it. So that was kind of fun.
And it didn't hit me until we left that, maybe we were secret shopped, because there's new rules about real estate and showing homes. And if you're showing a home from a Zillow lead, you need to get what's called a
touring agreement
signed prior to showing the home.
Right.
I bet you $50 there are people out there in the marketplace that are making these appointments on Zillow to secret shop and make sure realtors are following procedures.
And the good news is I am a stickler for the rules,
right,
and I don't want to get in trouble. And so I typically it sends through the system to the client, and then they sign it online.
Yes.
Well, I sent it twice and he didn't sign it. And so I just printed it and brought it with me. And so we're standing out in front of the house, and I said, "Hey, before we go in, Washington state law says I have to give you this." I give him the stuff that I have to give him, the pamphlet on agency and everything. I said, "And I need to go through this form with you. It's called a touring agreement." I kind of went over it a little bit with him, and before I can unlock the door. So just, blah, blah, blah. I've already signed here. You signed there. We get it all signed. Great. Now here's the information on the property. Let's go take a look. And so, I'm definitely a stickler for the rules.
Right.
I also will take advantage of every opportunity that I can for my client.
Sure.
Some people have called me a shark, and I wear that proudly.
Well, and the long story short is the client is getting pre-approved. He was not already pre-approved. I let him know that the house we looked at would only go cash, probably. It says cash or conventional. You could do an FHA renovation loan on that property because there is at least one standing wall and a foundation. So you could do that. But it's not your typical first-time home buyer scenario.
Yeah.
And I would never recommend your first-time home buyer jump into a renovation loan. Yeah. I once had a client that called me up.
I guess it depends on the person.
That's true. I once had a client that called me up and said, David, for my third loan with you, I'd like to do a renovation loan and add on to my house. And this is what I said to her. I said, listen, if you are willing to be your own contractor, and I don't mean get a general contractor's license to do it, I mean manage the contractor. If you're willing to do that, that's the only way I'll do a renovation loan for you. And she said, oh, I'll totally do that. And as soon as it closed, I made her my assistant, and she worked with me for 2 years.
Oh, that's funny.
Those loans take a degree of knowledge and labor that you must be up for to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's a relationship killer.
Right.
You don't want to put somebody in a loan product or in a house that in 6 months they will think, I don't care for these people. This process, I will tell everyone never to use them ever. You just don't want to do it. You want to avoid that if you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
okay, you ready for the next story?
Okay, that's story number 1. Secret shop down.
I think that was like 2 stories in one, maybe 3. I don't even know. This next one, this is a buyer beware cautionary tale. Okay. So we had a deal that closed this week. and which is why I get to go to the grocery store. But here's what happened. We represented the buyer, not the seller. Keep that in mind.
Right.
So we went to do the final walkthrough of the property. It was due to close on Wednesday. We go on, was it Sunday to do the final walkthrough?
Yes.
Sunday to do the final walkthrough. Why is a final walkthrough and reinspection important? Let me tell you. Because if the buyer made requests for repairs or modifications of the property, you want to get your inspector in there to reinspect those repairs to make sure they were done to standard. Okay. A final walkthrough is also important so that your buyer can be sure the property is still in the condition they expect it to be in, the condition that they saw it in, that the things they expect to be in the home are still there. Like we want to make sure if the refrigerator was to remain, it's still there. Sometimes, and it happens on accident. Sometimes we did that. We moved and took a wine fridge we weren't supposed to take and bought a new wine fridge. But, so you want to, there's a lot of things that you want to check, right? Just to make sure everything's cool. So the seller said, yeah, you can come in and do the walkthrough, but we're in the middle of moving. So it's a little messy. We're kind of living in temporary circumstances, but come on in. And they were there. And so we got to chat with them, and that's unusual where we live, but lovely. It was great. They've got a new 6-month-old baby. They're moving across the country. These are important details for the story. So they say to me, hey, just so you know, we close on Wednesday. The movers are coming Tuesday morning. And then we have a cleaner coming to clean the place, which I thought was great. Not everyone does that. So it was nice. And so by Wednesday, no problem at all. Right. Well, Tuesday night, I get in touch with their realtor and I say, hey, can I get in the morning to just put some like closing gift in the, I just hit the microphone with my face.
Keep going.
Closing gift in the house for the client. Right. And he's like, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. Hey, just so you know, little situation today. What's going on? Buyer beware, you guys. When you hire a moving company, make sure they are reputable.
Right.
Reputable moving company, especially if you're moving across the country. I don't know who they hired. So let me just say that.
If they're called Ted DiBiase's rip-off movers, probably
they might
not
as well
the people
have
you
been.
want to be
The
working
movers
with.
showed up Tuesday morning loaded half of the seller's belongings, then demanded another $10,000.
And then proceeded.
Or they would not load the rest of it, and they would not unload what they'd already taken.
That's correct. Proceeded to hold their belongings hostage on that truck.
$10,000. They ended up having to get the police involved, the local authorities involved. I mean, you can't find another. They were supposed to leave Wednesday morning for South Carolina. They had to cancel their plans.
Right.
They could not find another mover. Of course, short notice, a cross-country mover. Mm-hmm. They had to go get U-Hauls and try to get the stuff in. Half their stuff is being held hostage by this whoever they were. I was telling another realtor in our area about what happened, and he told me an agent he knows that exact same scam happened to them a couple of weeks ago. So be careful, careful, careful.
I wish we knew which moving company it was. I can tell you,
I don't know.
It was not anyone local that we do business with.
No. They hired a company out of Florida. At least they think they did. I don't know. Did they? I mean, who knows? But anyway, so that was the first craziness of that story. Well, then, he says, listen, with everything that's gone on, I know we close on Wednesday, but could they please have access to just the garage Thursday morning as well, because the rest of their stuff's in there and we just can't get another truck right now.
Right.
The buyer, I talked with the buyers about it. They're like, yeah, we're not planning to move in until this weekend anyway.
Right.
And this sounds like a terrible circumstance. Let them have all the time they need. Okay. So fine. Great. No problem. So I go over Wednesday night. No. Thursday. So they're supposed to be, the truck's coming Thursday morning and they're gonna be done. Right. So I get all the closing gift stuff. And now, my closing gifts are always tailored to my client. So this is a single guy buying this house, and he's going to share it with a couple of his buddies. 3 single guys in like their mid-20s.
Right.
You know what I got. I stocked up their kitchen. I put food in the refrigerator, in the freezer. I stocked them up on paper towels, toilet paper, paper plates, plastic forks, red Solo cups. Like the whole thing. They've got food for a few days in there. Anyway, they were thrilled out of their minds, and they're beer drinkers. So I got them. What's the champagne of beers? Miller High Life.
Yeah.
Miller High Life.
Okay.
Because it's the champagne of beers.
I gotcha.
So it was funny.
Clever.
So anyway, they were thrilled out of their minds.
And there's nothing wrong with Miller High Life, by the way.
With that. And, but I had to get it all set up and with their card and all the stuff and everything. So that's what I was planning to do. I got a trunk full of groceries in a sense, and I'm going over. Ada is with me.
Right.
And he goes, yeah, you can, the realtor said, yeah, you just, the garage code is this, and the keys are on the kitchen counter. Okay. So I punch in the garage code and we step back, and the garage opens and it is a solid wall of boxes and furniture.
Right. From
the door all the way back at noon on Thursday. We closed the day before.
Right. So you had to climb over this mountain of stuff.
Here's the problem. I didn't have time because I had to go set up another house that was closing. I had 1 hour to get this done.
Right.
To get this stuff in and go to the other closing and get their stuff set up before they were going to meet me to get their keys at a certain time.
Right.
So I'm on a time crunch. And Ada's like, well, we're just going to have to come back because there's no way in. And I said, watch me. Or bet, as the kids say.
Do the kids say that?
If they're 30, they do. I did. I wish I had a picture of what I saw. Listen, I didn't get hurt, so everything's fine. But I did crawl over the top of the boxes and all that furniture, and I worked my way back to the interior door, hoping and praying that it was not locked.
And it was not locked.
It was not locked. And I got into the house, so we were able to get everything set up. On the way to the other house to get that set up, I called the realtor and said, hey, just sent you a picture of the garage. Is everything okay? What's going on? And here's a tip for you, no matter what you do in life. When something goes sideways that you didn't expect, always assume there was an emergency and something's wrong. Don't assume they're just intentionally doing the wrong thing.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And so there was. The moving truck was delayed. It was completely out of their hands. And if I had called him all hot and upset, that doesn't help anything. Anyway, they got the stuff moved out. The truck was on its way. Everything worked out just fine. But what a crazy story. What?
This reminds me of when we moved from Florida to Louisiana. A driver came to pack up our stuff, and during the conversation, he tried to tell us we owed an extra $3,000. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And we said, no, we don't. I'm sorry that you guys underbid your deal, but we're doing it for this price. So go ahead and finish loading.
Yeah.
And we ended up not having to pay an extra $3,000. But if it's a reputable company, they honor their original
And he
quote.
said the same thing. I'm a third-party contractor, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's just a common thing that these people do, thinking you'll go for it. And I'm like, nope. I was on the phone with United Van Lines immediately.
Right.
Hey, your guy's here and trying to shake me down for $3,000 more. Oh, no. That's not a thing we do. Great. Hey, that's not a thing they do.
Right. I'm sorry that you accepted a bid that was wrong, but you accepted it. This is not our problem. Take it up with United Van Lines. And he did the right thing and turned out to be a super nice guy.
Yeah.
But whatever the case, that was not what happened in Pasco, Washington this week.
Right.
Crazy.
So this morning at 7 a.m., I met a contractor at a house, and in 36-degree weather, pulled foliage off of 145 feet of 6-foot cedar fence where creeping vines had grown all up around it. And we spent a bit of time this morning pulling all the foliage off this fence so that his employees could come in and scrape and paint it. So that's another crazy thing that people don't know that we do.
Sure.
People don't know we do that stuff. And you need to know, because I think that especially with the national conversation in recent months about realtors and real estate and all that stuff, and people think you put a sign in the yard and you collect a check.
Right.
And nothing could be further from the truth, you know? And the moments that, and the money isn't even the best pay. The best pay is like yesterday when I stood at a house with a first-time home buyer, and I handed her the keys. I hadn't even handed her the keys yet. We stood there side by side, and I said, she's all yours. You did it. We're looking at the house, and she started sobbing and said to me, you don't even understand. I'm the first person in my family to ever buy a house. My parents have never been able to buy one, and this is incredible. And I can't believe that this is happening. And we stood there just sobbing, both of us. And she said to me, you know, if my husband and I never have kids, because I don't know what their story is with that, but she goes, if we never have kids, we have this that's ours together. And she's just crying and crying. And I'm like, I could not handle it. They
are such a sweet couple. The best news is on all of these houses that we talked about this week, you were the realtor and I was the lender. And that's really cool.
Yes. And I didn't even get to the crawl space story, but you've got your headphones on.
Well, I've got my headphones on because we're coming up on 30 minutes. And I know
let me just quickly say, we have an inspection on a house. The inspector gets there. We see he's got to get under the house to inspect the crawl space. There's this much clearance.
Right. And she's
10 inches, maybe.
10 to 12 inches.
10 to 12 inch clearance. So our badass buyer, who's a kind of petite person.
Diminutive.
Yes. Suited up.
I got to tell you.
Goggles, the whole thing, and crawled under there while the inspector, halfway in the hole and halfway out, talked him through what to look for.
Right.
And that also another weird thing. I'm telling you, 5 years worth of weird shit happened over the last 2 weeks.
And the client we're talking about who crawled under the house, his father owns a moving company, and I should have told those people in Pasco to use him.
Oh, yeah.
And if they were our clients, we would have.
Yeah. Well, that's neither here nor there. So there you go. There's a few crazy real estate stories for you, a little bit of information about the market and what it means for people, which I think is the piece that we miss is, okay, that's great. What does it mean?
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that there are only, I'm doing the math real quick in my head, about 100 houses total under 400,000 in the Tri-Cities is a tiny, tiny number. 30 in Pasco, 127. Oh, 127. That's the total. There it is. Yeah.
I had it for you.
In all of the Tri-Cities under 400,000, that is not a lot of inventory. Only 459 houses over 400,000 and 336 new construction houses. There you go. This has been the real estate edition of The Session with Londa and David. For Londa, Joanne, Sherwood, Austin, my name is David Austin, and we'll be back here again next week.